at the same time.
Right? So that increases your bandwidth by multiple folds, right? Because you don't need to then allocate some particular frequency or particular time for one user. Multiple users can communicate at the same time. But what happens is it is a little more complex because you have to come up with those orthogonal codes. The codes are not random. Mathematically, when you decrypt them with the different keys, you can recover each one. So if you know the Fourier transforms. Have you done Fourier transforms?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you know Fourier transforms, you transform from time division to frequency division, and any signal that you get, it is a combination of multiple sine waves. Right? So you can actually have multiple sine waves, and then when you do the transform and you have the frequency bands, you can take out every frequency separate. And you find out that these are the frequencies of the complex signal. Same thing with the CDMA. In this particular spectrum, you can actually, in the coded spectrum, you can find out every particular signal and decode it.
Can we take it as, this is introducing some kind of security?
Yes. In addition, so because security was not the primary concern. Primary thing was to increase the bandwidth. But by definition, since it is encoding something, it also gives you more security.
And as it is transferring data at different frequency, there is one data divided into various packets, and transferring it at one frequency at one time or the other, it becomes difficult for the intruder to find out which packet is where.
Oh, no. So not that. So the frequency is the same for every user.
Okay.
So the transmission frequency is the same for every user. What happens is the chipping sequence, right? So that is different, but the frequency is still the same. The frequency means how many times you send the data, right?
Oh no, I was talking bandwidth over a particular bandwidth region
Okay.
where they can transfer it. That can change, na?
That can change, yeah, but that is another thing. That is hopping,
Yeah.
right? So it's frequency hopping, and that is in addition to this. So this is again orthogonal. So what she's talking about is frequency hopping. So what you do is you transfer at one frequency and then you jump to another frequency and so on, right? And so every time you transmit at a different frequency. That also becomes a secret. If the sequence of frequencies is not disclosed, then that is equivalent to having a password or a secret. Right? And if you know that secret, then only you can get the secret. But that is not used in CDMA. You can use it on top of CDMA. You can do CDMA, and on top of that you can do frequency hopping. So it's the standard protocol. So most of the wireless technologies nowadays use CDMA. Right? So whatever the wireless technologies that are coming up, even the short distance, not only long distance, they are using CDMA because of all of those properties. So next we'll look at the wireless LAN, because this is the most commonly used wireless network all over the world. So this is used in 2.4 to 5 gigahertz. You can get something in 2.4 gigahertz. This is the unlicensed radio spectrum, so you don't need a license across the globe. So that's why anywhere you go in any country, that particular frequency band is unlicensed. Anybody can use it. So that's why this was used for most of the purposes. Even your cordless phones and so on, they use this frequency. But you can also have a higher frequency version of this 802. So it is independent. 802.11 is a protocol. It talks about how to communicate between a master and a slave node, and when to send data and when not to send data. Right? So that is a protocol. It's all in software. And this I'm talking about radio spectrum is independent. So I can even implement this 802.11b protocol in AM radio. So the frequency that is used by the AM radio or FM radio, I can use the same protocol in that frequencies. So it's possible. So these two are different things, and you can implement this protocol in any one of these. So when these lights were designed, it was giving us 11 Mbps. Do you know how much it can go now? With A, B and G protocol now. So how much is the maximum bandwidth?
54 MB.
54 Mbps. Right now this has gone all the way to up to 4, and this again becomes how you do encoding and decoding and so on. Right? So your bandwidth is determined by one thing is what is your frequency of operation, and second is how you encode the data, right? If your encoding is better and better, and that's what the coding theory is. If your coding theory improves, then you can encode it in a better way, and so that you can transmit more data. So you can go all the way to the 54 Mbps. Then it uses something called direct sequence spectrum at the physical layer. So we will not go in detail about this. This is a particular technology that they would use so that at the physical layer you guarantee reliability. And all hosts use the same chipping code. So just like CDMA, so I was just talking about, the CDMA concept is now common across all the wireless transmissions. So even this uses a chipping sequence code. So at the physical layer, this also is doing encoding. So just talked about this one, 82.11a 5 to 6 now up to 54. This G is now 2.45 GHz up to 54. And now after this, so there is another technology called WiMAX. Maybe you have heard about this one. Wi-Fi was one technology, WiMAX is the another one. Anybody has heard of this term, WiMAX? It's not highly popular yet, but still it is.
Wi-Fi is for campus,
Right.
type only, and WiMAX is for large scale.
Larger, yeah. So for example, for the city of Delhi, there will be few access points, and then it will be WiMAX, right? So the range now has increased. So the protocol is little different, but there is still a master, there is a slave, and this typically uses a TDM. Another technology which it is being used in this is called MIMO. So anybody knows what MIMO is? This is again a term that you will hear more and more now after a few years. So MIMO is a technology for antenna. So it stands for multiple inputs, multiple outputs. So what happens is right now in your laptop, when you have 82.11b, there is one antenna which is embedded in somewhere. So typically it's embedded in your screen. Right? This entire screen, the side of it is your antenna, wireless antenna. Right? If you buy the Wi-Fi card in the old days, the antenna would stick out from the card. So there is one part of the card which is the antenna. Right? But so there was just one antenna. With this technology, you actually combine multiple antennas. Now what happens is base station will transmit data to the two antennas at the same time. So that will double your throughput. Right? So if you have two antennas receiving the data, it will double the throughput. So it's like having multiple Wi-Fi cards at the same time, and you are getting data at the same time on all of these cards. So this was used in WiMAX, and that is increasing the throughput. So WiMAX will typically give you more bandwidth than Wi-Fi protocol. So all of these protocols, wireless, will typically use CSMA because that's what you can do very easily. It doesn't require you to have any timing. So what is CA?
Collision avoidance.
Avoidance. So what is the difference between CA and CD?
Taking some precautions.
Right.
Once the collision happens, it detects it and it retransmits.
Right.
It is avoiding, CA is for avoiding it, detects previously that the collision is.
Right. So CD was used in the last class we saw it for the wired Ethernet. Right? And CA is used here. So anybody knows why we do not use CD? So collision detection means, so what happens with collision avoidance is you become pessimistic. You take a pessimistic view, and you try to avoid collisions. And even if there is no chance of happening collision, because you try to avoid it, your bandwidth will reduce. Detection means you just transmit, right? And you become optimistic. You think that it will not collide, and if in turns it collides, you just retransmit and do something else. But that increases your throughput a lot. Because if the air is, so if there are not many participants in the network, you just keep transmitting, and if there is a collision, once in a while you back off and do something. But with avoidance, you initially do some backing off and then you transmit, right? So it reduces. So why in wireless we do collision avoidance and not detection. So what is the reason? Why not have CD here also?
It is something behind the wall, we don't know how many people are sending.
But still, I mean, you can, even if you, so in both the things you don't know, right? In wired also you don't know how many people are connected to the
But
hub.
in wired there are less chances of collisions as compared to in
So the chances of collision depend is a function of how many users you have. If you have 5 users, you can calculate the probability. Right? So it's not about the medium. It's more about how many users you have. So what happens in the wireless part is the technology. Right? So in wireless, you transmit, and to detect something, you have to start receiving at the same time. And so you're transmitting a packet, half of the packet is in the air, it gets collided, and you have to receive that at the same time. And that is a challenging thing to do in wireless. Transmit and receive at the same time. Right? Because you need to not only use the crystal to send data, but also receive it. But in the wired Ethernet, what happens, this is your hub. And inside a hub, there is a token link, typically. There is a ring. When you transmit here, the data will flow like this, and you can start receiving at the same time. Right? So you just need to have 2 probes on the wire, where you are pushing data, bits, the electrons, one at a time, and on the second probe you are getting the packets. Right? So that is possible to do very easily. And since if there is a collision here, you will get this collision here. And you don't need a higher technology. So it's very easy to do in wired. In wireless it's also possible, but then you have to have multiple crystals, transmit and receive at the same time, and that will increase the cost of your device, and then finally it will increase the cost of your laptop. People will not be able to afford it. So that's why they decided not to use collision detection, but to avoid collisions as much as possible. All the base stations and ad hoc, so there are 2 versions, base station, master and slave, and the ad hoc. Ad hoc is totally peer-to-peer, it's a distributed system, and we said that initially there is no node in the network, in ad hoc network. First node comes, it sees, okay, is there an existing ad hoc network? There is none. So it will create its own ad hoc network, and it will use its own time as the primary time of the network. Second node joins, it sees, okay, is there a wireless network? If there is, it will also become part of the same wireless network as a peer-to-peer, but use the timing of the first node, and so on. So it will then extend as a wire. So,
Isn't in case of ad hoc, the first system coming to the network somehow acting like a master?
right, so in some sense it is acting like a master, but it's very limited. So we'll see what exactly masters can do in infrastructure. And
Because if the other systems in the network are using the time of the first system which actually came to the network, they have to somehow synchronize and do things.
Right.
The problem boils down to the same thing which was there in master slave.
Right. So there are a lot of things master does in infrastructure, and we'll see all of those things. Only one thing of timing is being carried out here like this. But the rest of the things of the masters are not done by any node in the ad hoc. Let's say the ad hoc type of network, it's just the time that's what being done. The rest of the things are independent. But yes, that part is, it is acting like a master in some sense.
Is it possible that we'll take a standard body which will transmit time in some, all the systems in the network which will use the time of a particular body? I mean, all such kind of networks which are created will use the time of that particular entity. Is something like this possible?
It's possible. So what happens is when you design a network, you want to minimize the dependencies. Right? So you can do something like this, but then what happens is whenever you need to create an ad hoc network, you need some body like this. Right? And then, it's possible, but it's just that it adds to the possibilities that whenever you want to create, you have to have this separate unit to send the
This
time.
kind of thing happens in distributed networks. They somehow synchronize their time using similar thing. I have read it.
Right, so what's happened in the internet? So internet, there is a protocol called NTP, network time protocol, and it's the standard protocol to send out time. And what it does is, in the entire internet, you identify some servers which are giving you just the time. But that server still has to follow the entire network protocol. So this is built on top of your IP or TCP. So there are some networks in that. So in India also there will be some servers which will have atomic clock. Right? So these atomic clocks are very accurate and they have temperature balancing and so on. So what you need to have is an oscillator for timing, right? And depending upon the current temperature, it can vibrate at different times. So you have to compensate for that. So with atomic clocks you can do that. And that will provide the right time. And then inside this campus there will be another server. We have another server which receives time from this server and synchronize it and then give time to the rest of the server. So there are servers like this. But these servers are not independent, as in they are not outside the network. They are also inside the network and they follow the standard TCP. Right? So you can do that. But then, so that's what exactly being done here in some sense, in ad hoc network also. There are some entities which will provide you the time, one entity will provide you the time and it will follow some network protocol. Okay? But the challenge again becomes is, even to send time you need to have the wireless messages to be sent. And to send wireless messages there has to be a network. Now it's a chicken egg problem, what comes first? Either you have the network first or the time first. But for time you need network and for network you need time. Right? So it becomes circular. So you have to break it somewhere. So you assume that this will provide you the time and this will give you the network. So the standard, I mean, you have all probably have set up a home wireless network nowadays. So the way it is done is, you have your access point like this and you connect it to a hub switch or router. So this could be a modem also. So if you have a cable modem or DSL modem, this is your modem and you connect your access point to this. Now,
you get Wi-Fi modem also.
right, so nowadays this is combined into one, right? So you don't need to buy separate devices. But in the olden days, this was separate, so you just buy any technology. So you can switch from cable to DSL to any other technology and just still use the same access point. But nowadays, even so, to make it compact, they have combined these two into one. And this could be hub, this could be a switch, or this could be a router. So anybody knows what's the difference between hub and a switch? Or let's say hub and switch and router. What is a
They all are
difference?
at different levels.
Works on different
Hub is for transmitting, it divides the line completely, as in if we have a 100 Mbps line and 10 ports on it, it will
Okay.
divide the complete line into 10 Mbps each.
Okay.
As in it would be transmitting all the data coming on single port to all other ports.
Okay.
In switch case, we have a, in switch and router, in router we have a complete router table which maps each and every line to a separate line. As in where to send it, we can completely configure the router to as in the speed, amount of bandwidth you want to give to a system or to a particular line. We can configure each and everything. Switch, basically, it is a partial configurable switch. Switch is partially configurable. We can dedicate a line or we can do big things of router on switch.
Right, right. So yeah, it's almost correct. But there are some technical things I would like to clear. Anybody wants to add to this what he has already said?
One works on physical address, one works on physical address.
So everybody will work on something physical.
So router is from one network to the other network, whereas a
Right.
switch is within a network.
Right. So router is network, right? Layer. So it will also work on the network layer. So that means when you go from one network to another network, and typical example is then if you go from 192.168.1.x to 192.169.1.x, right? So this is called a subnet. So this is a subnetwork. This is a subnetwork, and you go from one subnetwork to another subnetwork. You will need a router. Right? So that is what the router will. Okay. So that clarifies what router is. Now the question is hub and switch. So hub and switch will not do this routing, so that means by definition they will work on this network itself or this network itself. Okay. So But now what is the difference? So some of you said something, it's almost correct, but there is something that switch does, which you can say very concisely, which hub cannot do. So hub is a little dumb compared to switch.
So switch is a basically intelligent hub.
Right. Right.
Hub is a repeater.
Yes.
It doesn't know which.
Yes. So hub is, she is saying it's totally repeated. So that means if I get a packet, I will just shout it back to everybody. Right? So if this is my hub, with, let's say these many ports, so typically you have 8 port hub, 16, 32 and so on. So all those multiples or a power of 2. Right? So these are the ports on the hub. This is my hub. And these are the ports on the hub. If I receive a packet here in the hub, what will hub do is it will send it here, 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 everywhere. Right? So it just takes a packet and then it will give it to all the ports. Okay, that is hub. Now what switch does, it's a little more intelligent as compared to hub. So if it receives a packet here, so remember all the packets will be in the same subnetwork, 192.168, 1.x. It will not go to another network, right? So if it receives a packet here from 1.8, 192.168, 1.8, and the packet, the destination says it is 1.9, right? So switch knows where 1.9 is residing, on which port, right? So it will take the packet and it will only give to 1.9. So what is the advantage of switch now? So what do we get? If I want to talk about the bottom line.
Security. Not security. It is
Flooding of network.
Yeah. There is some security, but at the bottom line is what is the advantage?
Flooding, it avoids flooding of
Flooding. So you increase the throughput, right? So what hub is doing is you take one packet, you create multiple copies and it gets everywhere, right? So everybody gets this packet. So time on this link and this link is wasted because the packet will come here, the machine which is connected here, which is 1.10, it will look at this packet, discard it, right? So at a time you can just send one packet, right? And all the packets here get discarded. Here you get a packet, you send the packet. At the same time, switch can get a packet from here, which is for 1.10, and you will give it to 1.10. So at a time you are delivering 2 packets, here and here, right? Because this link is now empty, it is not utilized, and you can utilize for its own packet, right? So it will increase the throughput. So how does switch know that 1.9 is there?
When 1.9 sends some packet, it locates. It has a table which nodes on which port 1.9.
Right. So and what is the protocol to find out this?
ARP.
ARP, right? So when you do ARP at the address resolution protocol, hub, the switch is smart. Sorry, not hub. The switch is smart, and it is looking at which packet is coming on which port, and it remembers that, right? But now if I disconnect this machine and take it somewhere else, so its address will still be 1.9 and it gets connected here, right? And if it is silent for some time, what will happen is the switch will not come to know about this. So it will keep sending packets here. The packets will be sent to here, and then if there is another machine it will keep discarding, and then the switch will know, and then it has to reorganize its data. Right? So this is one sense doing something for the mobility. Right? So you can be mobile from here to here, here to here, here to here, and the switch will keep learning, right? And it will adjust its data. So that's the difference between a switch and a hub, right? So in the access, so you connect an access point to a switch, hub, or a router. And typically these days, you have a router. So router by definition inside will have something at layer 2 which will be a switch. So what you have at home is a router because it has to do some kind of a routing. Do you know what kind of routing it is doing? Have you looked at the IP addresses of the router and so on in your home? If you go into the administration screen, you will see
192.168.1 dot something.
right, but that is your internal. So everybody in the my home also has the same IP. You also have the same IP, right?
External IP is having
public IP to the private IP.
Private IP, right? So there is a public IP there, and so that's why it's doing routing. So it knows that the packet is going from one network to another network, and it has to do some routing. So that's why we call it a router. But it's a very basic router. It's not a smart router. So what I was saying? So base station is called an access point in this protocol. Then every access point creates something called basic services or BSS. Right? So that is the name of the wireless network that you see when you switch on your Wi-Fi card. You see all these networks. So everything is one BSS. And then you have access point, host, and in ad-hoc mode there are host only, but still here also there is a BSS. You say what will be the name of your network. So this is divided in 11 channels, 1 to 11. Even that I think you must have realized. When you look at the frequencies, you can actually select what is the channel. Right? So it goes from 1 to 11. So if I am using channel 1 here and you also in the neighboring room using channel 1 here, that's not good. Right? So this is something that you can go and do at your home. If you see your neighbors, you can do a scan and see what are the channels they are using. And then you can set the channel of your own Wi-Fi router accordingly. So there are 3 channels which are mutually non-interfering. Channel 1, channel 6 and channel 11. So these are actually the maximally spaced apart, right? So this is what you can get from 1 to 11. So this is the first point, this is the last point, and this is exactly in between, and these are completely independent. So if your neighbors are typically using channel 1, then if you switch on to channel 6, that is best for you. That will be minimum interference. So these are 11 different channels at different frequencies. The separation is pretty small. So 1 and 6 are totally non-interfering, and so on with 6 and 11. So access point admin chooses frequency. So of course access point is the master. So it decides the frequency, it decides the network name, and then everybody will follow that. Right? So this is what, and then you have to select them. So right now the Cisco switches that come, Cisco access point, they are smart enough to see what is the neighboring frequency that is being used by the next Cisco access point, and it dynamically changes its own. Right? So these are smart, but then what you can do is manually control the frequencies. Host must associate itself with an access point. So host, when it sees the network, then you select the network. Typically, when you select it, it will connect to the access point base station and it associates itself. So access point can let you join the network or deny you the permission. Right? So it depends. And what something typically you can do is the MAC address, right? So you can say only these MAC addresses can join me. The rest of them cannot join me. This is one way you can do. You can put a secret WEP protocol, WPA and so on, all these protocols, and then have a key, and only those people who know the key can join the network and rest are denied. So the host scans the channels listening for beacon frames containing access point name. So you can even set this parameter to true or false. If you want your access point to be secret, what you can say is don't send these beacon messages. So nobody will know that your network exists. Right? So your neighbors will not even come to know that your network exists. Only if you know the network name, you can type it in and then join. Okay? So this is one way to do this. Then you select AP associate with it, may perform authentication, that's what we already saw. We'll typically run a DHCP to get IP address from the AP subnet. Right. So what is the DHCP protocol? Dynamic host protocol. So what happens is, assigning IP address is a big task, right? Because it has to be unique for every host. And if you let the host decide its own IP address, so you might select one, I might select one, and both could be conflicting. So that's why we use DHCP. Now this protocol is at layer 2. So you have to always understand the layers, because what happens is only the same layer will talk to each other. Right? So access point has to do communication at layer 2 also, and then DHCP is something which is in between, because it also assigns you an IP address which is part of the layer 3. So now it becomes 2 point something. Right? So access point can give you DHCP address, or there could be a DHCP server giving you the IP addresses. So avoid collisions as much as possible. This is a free network, everybody can transmit at the same time. So you want to avoid the collisions. or more nodes cannot transmit at the same time. So one thing to do is CSM, and the way it is done is you first sense the channel. What is the simplest thing you can do? If somebody is transmitting already, there is no point transmitting, right? So you don't even need a protocol for that. It will collide. So you do a sensing, and that is possible because you are not now transmitting. Your only receiver is off. Your transmitter is off. You sense something is transmitting, and you avoid it. So that will not collide with the ongoing transmission. Okay, so that's fine. So this by the way, this protocol has come up after so many days. So it sees, if you look at the protocol definition, it is very simple, right? But to derive this protocol, they have taken so many years, right? Because it has to be optimal, simple, and still provide you with all these properties. So 802.11b, there is no collision detection, and we saw the reason why there is no collision detection. Because it's difficult to do the sensing and transmission at the same time for your wireless card. So now what you do is you cannot detect it, so you just avoid it. Just like in the deadlock. In the operating system class, you must have said that you can prevent a deadlock, you can avoid, and so on, right? Once you detect a deadlock, you break the deadlock. Or you at the beginning itself try to avoid it. So you will do something similar here. So it's all similar, operating system networks. You try to avoid collisions. So how will you avoid collisions? If you are now asked to design the protocol, right? So you know what detection is. You detect a collision, then what do you do in Ethernet? If there is a collision, anybody remembers in 802.11.3, which is the Ethernet protocol, wired Ethernet protocol, if there is a collision, you detect it, and what do you do after detecting the collision? What is the first step you will do when you detect a collision?
So we'll inform the other side.
So this is the diagram I was talking about. There is a hub. This is a wire. You are transmitting the data. Packet goes here. You can receive at the same time. You receive this, and you see there is a collision happening. Somebody else is also transmitting at the same time. What is the first step you do? Not transmit, right? You have to terminate your transmission. That's the first thing. Then only it will stop collision. Otherwise, you send all of these packets, or the bits, not the packets, bits, and all of these bits gets collided, and it's the wastage. So you waste your own energy. So that's not advisable. So first thing you do is you stop transmission. What is the next step?
We send a signal to check because both of them stops transmission.
Both of them will stop the transmission at the same time.
Select a random value.
Right. So what is the next step? Is somebody has to transmit again, right? Both of them stop transmitting. Now everybody is quiet. Somebody has to transmit, otherwise the channel will be empty. Right? So one guy decides to transmit. But if you let the protocol design such a way that both of them transmit at the same time, again there is a collision and there is no use, right? So the protocol now says is don't transmit immediately. Select a random backoff. Random means you will select one random value, and the hope is the next other person will select some other random value. And they will back off for a different amount of time, and then one guy will bill and transmit at the first time. Now the second guy who has selected a larger value of time off will see this transmission happening, right? And then it will not transmit, even if its random value expires. So you have to see the protocol like this. So this is random value 1 and this is random value 2. R1 is less than R2. So in most probability this will be the case, one is more than the other. So R1 expires and this guy will transmit. And R2 will also expire sometime. If it expires sometime within when our first guy has stopped the transmission, it will again collide. So the protocol now has to be when R2 is looking at the time value and it expires, again sends the channel is empty or not, and then if it is empty then only transmit, otherwise don't transmit. Okay. So this was our wired protocol. Now we are so this is collision detection and then we take actions. Now you have to come up with a protocol to avoid. Right. So when the collision occurred, the first thing that both of them will do is stop transmission. Okay, so there is no transmission anymore. Now they will select random values. With most probability, high probability, the values will be different. There is very low probability of having the same value. But then we have to also consider that case. Right? So let's consider that case. What happens if both the values are same? There is a possibility. Again collision, right? So we come back to the same problem. So we reduce second problem to the first problem again. So there is a collision, they will transmit, they terminate, and we are back to square one. Okay? With this square one, there is a probability in future that R1 will be less than R2. And this could be either way, R2 less than R1, and both the cases are same. Right? So if R1 is less than R2, then we will transmit. So this guy will transmit it when R1 expires. R2 can take actions. What is the two actions it can take? One thing is, it is decrementing its own counter and it sees that this guy is transmitting, and then it will say, okay, back off again and go back to a bigger value. Assuming that he will assume that there is a collision now and go to a bigger value. Or what it can do is, it will wait till R1 finishes, this transmission finishes, and then transmit after that. If it's R2 this time, is this or is this fast?
Is it like that when R2 sees R1 is transmitting something, when his
Yes.
time expires, he will not transmit, he will
Right,
increase his value.
right.
This can be done initially when he decides sending something. He can check if someone is
Right,
transmitting. So
right.
what's the point of doing this?
What's the point of?
Doing all this, because it is, in the end it is doing this.
Yes. So you don't have to check in between, right? You check only when you are ready to transmit, right? So that is one optimization we can do. And when it's ready to transmit here, it checks whether somebody else is transmitting or not. If it is transmitting, then it can again back off, or it can wait till the transmission is over and transmit immediately.
In such cases, collision will not occur, or will occur with a very low probability.
Low probability. So the thing about this is, to wait till one guy is transmitting and immediately transfer after that is not advisable typically. It's because there could be more nodes or hosts waiting for the same transmission to occur, right? So what happens in the protocol design is, you never design a step or your function such that when one transmission finishes, immediately transfer, right? So you always keep some back off, some random value there also. So that is how typically the protocols will be designed. Okay, but this is still collision detection and you take action. Now I am asking you to design a protocol which will avoid collisions.
Still a little
Sure, okay, and this one?
Yes, exactly. Because if the sender is checking whether someone is transmitting or not before actually transmitting, this is essentially doing something like collision avoidance before actually transmitting.
Right.
And then it will transmit once the other one is done with whatever he
Yes.
wants to do. Then collision will not occur, and then he'll never find a need to select.
Right. So I hinted at a solution, actually. So this is what kind of collision avoidance is, right? So what you're doing is, you wait and you don't transmit immediately. So to avoid collisions means you just back off something at the beginning itself, okay? And then transmit. So one extreme case would be, and this is used by some of the wireless protocol, is whenever you want to transmit, first do a random back off. Right? So if the channel is empty, so the protocol is like this. If the channel is empty, do a random back off. So every node will do a random back off, and with high probability all these backups will be different. And only one node will win, and he will transmit. Other nodes, when they see this transmission happening, they will again do one more random back off. Right? So now what's happening is, at the beginning itself there are so many random backups, which are all non-zero. That means even if the channel is empty, nobody transmits. So that cuts down your throughput or your bandwidth. But then you are avoiding the collision. And so this is what typically the collision avoidance is. You cannot detect it, so you just assume that there is a collision and do a back off and then transmit. And that protocol is solid. So the random back off and then transmission, that protocol is what we have designed is solid to avoid collisions. Right? So detecting the collisions and taking an actions, now we just do it even before, without having the collision. So still there is a problem of hidden terminal, we'll see. Because with hidden terminals you cannot even sense the channel. Right? But that's something different.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's just, I mean, what I could make out is that in the case of wired, we first see if there is a collision, then
Yes.
we'll do all these things.
Yes.
And in the other case, we'll actually take a random value and then transmit accordingly. And in that case, once the collision is detected, it'll continue using the same thing which we use in case of collision avoidance. That is, it'll take random values, see if the other one is transmitting or not, and then accordingly transmit. And that is, it's like collision will occur one time and then it never occur again because it is actually avoiding.
Right.
But
So-
it might lead to starvation as in if you are completely sensing. If I keep a file, a big file to download and it is always continuously using the line. So how would the other will always keep checking that?
Right. So two questions. So one thing is, so before going to the starvation, now here you still cannot detect a collision. Right? Even if there is a collision, I say in the wired protocol, you detect it, you terminate your transmission. In wireless, what will happen is, if there is a collision, you cannot sense the collision. You still transmit everything, the packet will entirely get corrupted and it's lost. So you need to build a mechanism to detect that this has happened. Right? And you cannot sense the channel. So what would you do? You need, because the packet is lost, so you have to retransmit it. So what do you do now? In wireless?
So we send a signal to everybody saying that the collision has occurred, and then
But how do you know whether collision has happened? You don't know that,
if C is trying to communicate with B,
right?
then B will, before establishing the connection, will transmit a message that I have to establish this connection.
It's kind of
Right.
like we would accept
It's like a-
C's
it's
offer
some
to send
main-
data.
Okay, so
Not
you're
accept-
saying A and B, but even that first message, if it gets collided, so now we're designing the wireless protocol, right? So you're assuming that the first message goes through,
Then, but
even that is collided.
if it is collided, then C would know that something has happened because he would not receive the acknowledgement or the
Right, so acknowledgement. So acknowledgement is the key thing, right? So what will happen in this wireless protocol is you have to build the concept of acknowledgement. Right? You send the packet, and if it is, and you expect the receiver to acknowledge it. And whenever it is acknowledged, that means the packet was received correctly. If there is no acknowledgement, and that acknowledgement, there is no acknowledgement mean two things again.
it can be lost or time out.
Lost or collision.
Right, lost or collision. So, no, even lost. So either your data was collided or your acknowledgement was collided. Right? So, but let's ignore that the acknowledgement will collide for some reasons, okay? Because acknowledgement is very small packet. So that means something was wrong, right? So so timeout happens at the transmitter, the original node, and it will again send the packet, right? So if there is no acknowledgement in some time period, you assume there is a collision, and now you kick in the same protocol of random backoff and so on, right? So now coming to the starvation, right? So there could be a case of starvation. One node will just have something, and this is what is being done by some of your wireless cards. So you see, some laptops are very good in Wi-Fi, some laptops are not very good in Wi-Fi. Anybody knows the reason? What happens? Some manufacturers, they cheat. What they do is they take off this random backoff value to be always very small value, right? And they always win. And that's how so there is a standard body to check whether everybody is following the protocol or not. But some manufacturers do cheating and they select the random backoff value to be very small, so they always win and they always get the best throughput over the wireless, right? And this is what is happening. And you can even do that. If you rewrite your MAC protocol, you can cheat all of these values and you will always get priority among your friends and get the best throughput. Okay? So there could be a case of starvation. So now what happens is the base station has to be a master here and see whether everybody is getting the good throughput or not. Right? But if base station is not smart enough to do this, of seeing whether it is fair or not, then one laptop will win and it will get the maximum throughput. So this is avoid collision. So we'll see the protocol now. So if you look at the protocol,
Just to summarize and clarify, in case of wired, we are doing CD1 and CA forever, and in case of wireless, we are doing CA forever.
yes. So
This is
right. So there is no collision detection in the sense this way. So while transmitting, you cannot detect the collision, right? But you still need to detect it as we say the acknowledgement, ACK part, right? So you detect the collision, but you cannot guarantee what was collided and so on, or whether the packet is lost, right? So it could be the case that you send the packet and the transmission and receiver were very far apart, right? So they are so far that, for example, your laptop is out of the range of the access point. Now when you transmit, your packet just is not collided. It just never reached the access point. Right? So even in that case, you will not receive an acknowledgement and you will retransmit. So you haven't detected for 100% there is a collision or not. You just say the packet was lost.
And in case of wire, it is like collision detection once and
Yes.
collision avoidance forever.
Sorry. Right. Once you detect the collision, you break the transmission and you try to avoid the same thing happening again.
And they keep on checking even after that if some collision occurs, that can be detected in case of wire.
Yes.
But in the other case, it is not possible. That can only be determined using acknowledgement.
Yes. And then you try to avoid it at the best. So the protocol is sender and receiver. So there will be two entities, and we will not say whether which is the base station and so on. Right? So if a sense channel is idle, so this is, if you see the channel is idle, that means nobody is transmitting for DIFS time. For DIFS, let's say it's some constant value, and you wait for entire, it's not like instantaneously. You look at the channel is empty, that means you can transmit. It's not like that. So you sense it for some time. Do you know why this time, DIFS? Why not just, if channel is empty, just transmit it?
It can be that there is some time that one node needs to notify that if one node has transmitted the data, then other node to know that data has been transmitted.
Right,
Sometime
right.
has to be made
Sometime
because
has to be
the
made.
band because the channel length could be.
Right. So it's all radio frequency, the message are sending and received at the speed of light, actually, which is very fast. But still, by the time you start transmitting, it takes some time for the message to receive at the other end. Even if it's a transmission at the speed of light, it's not a zero value, right? So it's a non-zero positive value. So that's why you have to wait for some time, because the message could be in air, it's just that it has not reached the receiver. So if you wait for this much time, you transmit the frame, entire frame. So this is one way, right? So what I discuss is a little different, but let's see this protocol. If sense channel busy, that means if in DIFS time, at any point in DIFS, entire value, if you see that the channel is busy, that somebody is transmitting, start random back off time. So you randomly back off for some time. Timer, this is the timer, so everything is in terms of timers. Timer counts down while channel is idle. Then transmit when the timer expires. So when the timer is expired, nobody is transmitting, you transmit it, you transmit the frame. If no acknowledgement is received, increase the random back off interval and repeat 2. Okay, so you have transmitted the data, channel was idle, your timer expired, but you haven't received the acknowledgement. Then you retransmit with a increased random back off. So this is also important. And you don't transmit immediately. So what you assume here is the collision must have happened. And then you randomly back off for some time or more interval. This increase is important part. And then repeat 2. Now one difference then from what I said in the earlier slide is this part. Right? So if for DIFS time, if there is no transmission, you transmit immediately. Right? So in 802.11b that is the case. But there are some other wireless protocols in which case here also you randomly back off at the beginning. Right? But in 802.11b that's not the case. Okay, so but here you do a random back off, and here you increase the random back off and transmission. You increase it because you assume there is a collision. Now receiver is okay. It's very simple. If the frame received is okay, that means the CIC check was okay, return the acknowledgement after CIFS. So you wait for some time and then you send the acknowledgement. And so we saw the need for acknowledgement, and there is one more thing which is hidden terminal, but that's fine. So you return for some time and then you don't do an immediate transmission. Because when you receive the packet, you don't want to immediately transmit again. So you wait for some time, let the air stabilize, and then you send the packet. So what would be the relation between this and this? DIFS and CIFS. Any guesses? Or can you think what could be? So these are two constant values. So which will be greater and which will be smaller? Or can these be equal?
SIFS should be less than DIFS.
Yeah.
Why?
Because in SIFS, we
DISF would be more as in.
Right. So that's what he's saying. But why?
because in because if you have A, B or C terminals, then in DIFS you need to know that C is transmitting to B through A needs to know that C is
Right.
transmitting to B.
Right.
But in SIFS we need only
Right.
A to know that B has been transmitted and B to
So if you look at this, you wait for some time, DIFS, you transmit the frame, it will take some time. This is the time to receive the data, right? Even if you start transmission here, it takes this much amount of time to receive the data. That's the point of having DIFS. Right? And then the whole data comes in here, and you wait for some time here, SIFS, which will be less than DIFS, and then you send an acknowledgement. Right? And this is how the protocol way it works. So the idea of collision so allows sender to reserve channel rather than random access of data frames. Right? So one way to avoid collision is also to reserve channel. So you can say, okay, this is the channel is reserved and I will use it, and then that's about it. Sender will first transmit small request to send. So this is talking about the hidden terminal block, right? Or some way to reserve channel. One thing you can do is DIFS and CIFS and then send the data. But another thing you can do is, if you want to send lot of data, right? So you don't want to follow this protocol of waiting for DIFS transmit, again wait for DIFS and transmit. So if you have lots of data to transfer, what you can do is you send a small request to send packet to base station using CSMA. So using CSMA, when I say using CSMA, that means using the real protocol. Right? So that will guarantee that my RTS packet goes through. Because CSMA now, what we are saying is CSMA will guarantee that the packet is delivered or the frame is delivered. Right? So if I use CSMA protocol, then my RTS packet will be delivered to the base station. Right? So this is the case, it will still collide, but your protocol will handle the collision and make sure at the end, in some time instant, that it will be delivered. The base station, when it receives this RTS, will send CTS, clear to send, in response to RTS. Right? So this is how the network looks like now. There is a base station and there are hosts. So base station is heard by everybody. So that is the property we are using. H1 may not hear H3. They could be very far apart. But the property is everybody can hear base station. If that is not the case, we can prove that the node, the host is not part of the network. Right? If you cannot hear the base station, you are not part of that network. Right? So now H1 can send RTS. So it goes to base station. Right? And so in response to that, base station broadcast. This is again a very important one, broadcast. CTS, right? So now since base station can be heard by all the hosts, every host can hear the CTS and they will get the message. And now what will happen is, base station in the CTS message can say, okay, let the channel be empty for this much period of time except for H1. So now H1 has reserved the channel, it doesn't have to wait DIFS and so on, just keep transmitting data as much as you want for that time period and then it can stop. And it is guaranteed that nobody will interrupt that transmission. Right? So you can use very small reservation packets like RTS and CTS and then do a burst of transmission. And your access point, you can enable this or disable this also. So if you want to have reservation and send a lot of data, like you are uploading lots of big files, you can use this feature. But if you don't want people to use this feature and reserve channels, you can avoid this. Let's see the diagram of this. A and translation is in between. So one case could be both of them send the RTS at the same time. This is the extreme or the worst case scenario. And the RTS will collide, but then they can be taken care of through the acknowledgement. So in the next step, RTS of A goes to B because RTS of B has selected a random backoff which was larger. So this wins. It will send, if packet reaches access point. Access point will send CTS saying A can transmit for this much time. B also receives this packet. Now B will not transmit. B will defer transmission for that much period of time, and then this guy can transmit and send the data. So the data transmission from A goes through. So look at, so B is actually not receiving any of this data because it is too far. It is hidden from him. And then when access point receives this data, it will send an acknowledgement which will be received by B. Right? And when B receives this acknowledgement, it knows that the transmission is over and it can now do a reservation if it wants to. So I don't want to go into another thing because that will just add topics to your exams, right? So let's stop here. Okay. And but any questions on this part? So these are all protocols are also very important, and there could be subtle questions on this one. You have to understand the entire protocol, why every action. Even if you see that random back off and this and broadcast, but every term is important and it has meaning, why it was designed. So if I change a protocol anyhow somewhere in between, that will result in something which is bad. And you should be able to figure it out. Right? So that could be the questions in the exams, where I change few actions and you have to figure out what will happen back. So let's stop here today. If you have any questions, this is an office hour, right? Tomorrow.